The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Stood among the delegation, his four arms crossed tightly against his chest as the holographic display showed the death sentence approaching his. The asteroid field stretched across the screen like a wound in space, thousands of rocks ranging from the size of buildings to the size of small moons. All of them were heading straight for Seven, the most populated colony in territory. 800 million of his people lived on that world. Families, children, elders who had survived 3 wars. They had maybe 72 hours before the first impacts began. After that, the colony would burn for weeks until nothing remained but ash and silence. High Counselor of the stood at the central podium, his ancient gray scales catching the dim light of the chamber. He had led the council for 40 years, but today he looked every day of his considerable age. His voice trembled as he addressed the gathered representatives from 37 species. The calculations are final, announced. Evacuation efforts can save approximately 2% of the population. We simply do not have enough ships, and we do not have enough time. A wave of murmurs rolled through the chamber. The ambassador slammed his heavy fist against his console. The delegation huddled together, their wings buzzing with distress. Someone from the back shouted that they should have better prepared for such events. Someone else demanded to know who was responsible for the ancient weapon test that had disturbed the field centuries ago. Watched his own ambassador try to speak, but the words would not come. What could anyone say? His people were going to die, and the galaxy's greatest civilizations could do nothing but argue about blame. Perhaps, suggested the ambassador with barely hidden satisfaction, this is simply the natural order. Colonies in dangerous regions accept certain risks. You speak of natural order while millions face extinction. The representative's voice was sharp with disgust. Have you no shame? I speak of reality. We cannot move planets. We cannot stop asteroid fields. Some disasters are beyond intervention. The argument continued for another hour. Proposals were made and immediately rejected. Some species offered token assistance that everyone knew would be meaningless. Others simply remained silent, unwilling to waste resources on a lost cause. Notice that the human delegation had not spoken once during the entire session. There were only 3 of them, seated in the small section allocated to younger species. Humanity had joined the galactic community less than 50 years ago. They were still considered newcomers, their opinions rarely sought on major matters. The lead human was a male named Danny Cole. He was unremarkable by most standards, neither particularly tall nor particularly impressive. He wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps and sat with his hands folded calmly on the table before him. Beside him was a female named Lisa Marsh, an engineer who worked on the station. She was watching the display with an expression could not read. Finally, Counselor turned to the human section. It was mostly a formality. No one expected the young species to contribute anything meaningful to the discussion. Earth delegation said with tired politeness, "Does humanity wish to offer a position on this matter?" Danny Cole stood slowly. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species that had existed before his ancestors learned to make fire. There was no fear in his expression. There was something else, something that made suddenly pay closer attention. "Yes," Danny said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "We'll take care of it." For a long moment, no one moved. Thought perhaps he had misheard. The translator implants sometimes made errors with human speech patterns. "I apologize," Counselor said slowly. "Could you repeat that?" "We'll take care of it," Danny repeated. He said it the same way someone might offer to handle a minor administrative task. Casual, confident, final. The ambassador let out a bark of laughter. "The humans will take care of it. A species that discovered faster-than-light travel within living memory will solve a problem that has defeated the greatest minds of the galaxy." Danny turned to face the directly. His expression did not change. Yes. With what resources? The ambassador finally found his voice. His mandibles clicked with desperate hope and skeptical confusion. What do you require from the council? Permission to act, Danny said, in 48 hours. Lisa Marsh stood beside him. We'll need to coordinate with traffic control to clear shipping lanes. Otherwise, we'll handle logistics ourselves. This is absurd, they declared. We should not waste the Council's time with impossible promises from a primitive species. Then don't watch, Danny replied. He turned back to Counselor. Do we have permission? The old stared at the human for a long moment. Something passed between them that could not understand. Finally, nodded slowly. Permission granted. May whatever gods you believe in guide your efforts. Danny Cole nodded once. Then he simply walked out of the chamber, Lisa Marsh following close behind. They did not look back. They did not make grand speeches or demand recognition. They just left as if they had somewhere important to be. The council erupted into chaos the moment the doors closed. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Several demanded that Earth be censured for making mockery of a tragedy. Others argued that any attempt was better than none. Did not join the debate. He pushed through the crowd and followed the humans out into the corridor. He found them standing by a window that overlooked the docking bays, already speaking rapidly into communication devices. Human Cole called out, "Wait." Danny lowered his device and turned. "Ambassador, what can I do for you?" "You cannot be serious about this. The mathematics are clear. The resources required to deflect that field do not exist in sufficient quantities anywhere in the galaxy." Danny smiled. It was a strange expression, warm but somehow unsettling. The mathematics are clear to species that have never faced extinction-level events on there. Humans have. Multiple times. We're still here. What does that mean? It means we've had practice. Danny glanced at Lisa, who nodded and walked away, already coordinating with someone on the other end of her device. "Ambassador, I'm going to be very busy for the next 2 days, but if you want to understand what's about to happen, you're welcome to join us." Should have returned to his delegation. He should have been helping with evacuation planning, however futile. Instead, he found himself nodding. "I will observe," he said. "Good." Danny started walking toward the human docking section. "You might want to send a message to your people on 7. Tell them help is coming." "You truly believe you can do this?" Danny stopped and looked back over his shoulder. His eyes held something ancient, something forged in the fires of a world that had tried to kill his species 1,000 different ways. "Ambassador, I don't believe we can do this. I know we can, because we have to. And when humans have to do something, we find a way." Watched him walk away, and for the first time in hours he felt something other than despair. He could not call it hope, not yet. But it was close. It was terrifyingly close. He reached for his communicator and began composing a message to his family on 7. He did not know what to tell them except that the humans had made a promise. And somehow, impossibly, he was beginning to think they might actually keep it. 6 hours after Danny Cole made his promise, stood in the observation deck of the human carrier ship Meridian and watched the impossible become real. Through the massive windows, he could see ships arriving. Not 1 or 2, but dozens. Then hundreds. They came from every direction. Heavy cruisers with weapons powerful enough to crack small moons. Mining vessels built for tearing apart asteroids. Transport ships loaded with equipment he could not identify. Fuel tankers, repair frigates, medical ships, communication relays. "How many ships does Earth have?" asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lisa Marsh stood beside him, a tablet in her hands as she coordinated incoming traffic. "Not enough. We called in favors from our colonies and corporate partners. Some of these ships were supposed to be mining the outer reaches of our territory. They dropped everything and came." "But why? There is no profit in this. There is no strategic advantage. Your species gains nothing from saving lives. Lisa looked at him with an expression that seemed almost sad. You really don't understand, do you? We're not doing this for profit. We're doing it because someone needs help. A door opened behind them, and Admiral Grace Perry walked onto the observation deck. She was a small woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight knot and eyes that had seen more battles than most species had fought in their entire histories. She moved with the confidence of someone who had given orders in the middle of chaos and expected them to be followed. "Ambassador," she said with a brief nod, "I'm told you're here to observe. Stay out of the way and you can watch everything." "Admiral Perry, I must ask the same question I asked your diplomat. Do you truly believe this can work?" Grace Perry did not smile. She studied him with those cold, calculating eyes for a moment before answering. "I've commanded ships in situations that made this look simple. Asteroid storms near Jupiter. Rescue missions in the debris fields of Saturn's rings. Once, I pulled 600 colonists out of a failing station while it was falling into a gas giant. And you succeeded." "I'm still here, aren't I?" She turned to the window. "The problem isn't whether we can do this. The problem is time, so I suggest you let us work." She walked away, already speaking into her communicator, issuing orders that sent ships moving across the void like pieces on a game board. Spent the next several hours simply watching. He watched humans argue with each other, sometimes shouting, their faces red with frustration. Then, moments later, those same humans would work together in perfect coordination, finishing each other's sentences, anticipating needs before they were spoken. A human male named arrived on a shuttle from one of the mining vessels. He was a civilian, Lisa explained, a specialist in asteroid demolition who had been working a contract 3 systems away when the call went out. He had abandoned a job worth more money than most humans made in a decade to be here. "Why?" asked him directly. Was checking equipment, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. He was a plain-looking man with calloused hands and tired eyes. "Why what?" "Why did you come? You owe the nothing. This mission could kill you." Stopped and looked at. For a moment, the human seemed confused by the question, as if the answer was so obvious that asking it made no sense. "There are kids on that planet," said finally. "Millions of kids who haven't done anything wrong to anyone. They're going to die if we don't help. What kind of person would I be if I just kept working my contract while that happened?" "A rational one, a safe one." Laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Then I guess I don't want to be rational or safe." He returned to his equipment. "My daughter is 7 years old. If she was on that planet, I'd want someone to come, so I came." Had no response to that. The briefing took place in the Meridian's command center, a room filled with screens and holographic displays. Admiral Perry stood at the center, surrounded by her senior officers and civilian specialists. Danny Cole was there too, along with a woman introduced as Doctor, who ran something called the Emergency Logistics Division. "Here's the situation," Admiral Perry began, pointing at the holographic display of the asteroid field. "The field is approximately 40,000 kilometers wide and contains an estimated 6,000 objects large enough to cause extinction-level damage. Current trajectory puts first impact in 61 hours. The original plan from Galactic Council simulations called for gravitational tethers to redirect the field," added. "That won't work. The field is too dense, and we don't have enough tethers. So we improvise," Admiral Perry said. "We're going to use coordinated nuclear detonations along the field's leading edge to break up the largest objects. Then our mining vessels will use gravitational pulses to redirect the medium-sized debris. Anything small enough, we'll let the planetary defenses handle." "The Council said deflection was impossible," interrupted. "They said the field was too vast." Admiral Perry fixed him with a steady gaze. "The Council calculated based on conventional methods and available galactic resources. They didn't calculate based on what humans can do when we decide something has to happen. What do you mean? I mean we're going to fly ships into that field and stay there for as long as it takes. We're going to make adjustments in real time, adapt to changing conditions, and push through problems that would make any sane species retreat. We're going to do it because giving up is not something we're good at. Raised a hand. Admiral, what's the expected casualty rate for mining crews? The room went silent. Admiral Perry did not look away from him. Projected losses are between 15 and 25% of deployed mining vessels. We've already sent word back to Earth. Families have been that this is a volunteer operation. Anyone who wants to leave can leave now, no questions asked. Nodded slowly. Just wanted to know what we're dealing with. And you're staying? Yes, ma'am. I already told my daughter I'd be home for her birthday. I intend to keep that promise. Felt something cold settle in his stomach. These humans knew they might die. They knew the odds, and they were staying anyway. After the briefing, he found Danny Cole standing alone by a window, watching the fleet arrange itself into formation. Your people are remarkable, said quietly. Danny did not turn around. No, we're just stubborn, there's a difference. You speak as if this is a character flaw. Sometimes it is. We've fought wars against each other for thousands of years because neither side would admit defeat. We've destroyed parts of our own world because we refuse to accept limits. Danny finally turned, and his eyes held a weight that seemed far too heavy for someone so young. But sometimes, stubbornness is exactly what you need. Sometimes the universe throws something at you that can't be beaten by logic or calculation. It can only be beaten by refusing to stop. And if you fail, if all your stubbornness is not enough. Danny was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but certain. Then we'll fail knowing we did everything we could. And maybe that won't save anyone. But it's better than sitting in a council chamber arguing about blame while millions die. At least we'll be out there trying. The fleet began to move. Hundreds of ships, thousands of humans, all heading toward a wall of death because someone they had never met needed help. Composed another message to the council. He wrote that statistics and calculations did not capture what he was witnessing. He wrote that humans were not acting rationally. They were acting like they genuinely believed they could win. And that, he was beginning to realize, made them more dangerous than any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. The first explosions lit up the void like artificial suns, watched from the Meridian's command center as nuclear warheads detonated along the leading edge of the asteroid field, shattering massive rocks into smaller fragments that could be redirected. For a brief moment, hope surged through him. The plan was working. Then everything went wrong. The field was more unstable than anyone had predicted. The explosions triggered chain reactions that sent debris cascading in unexpected directions. Rocks that should have drifted harmlessly apart instead collided with each other, creating new deadly projectiles. Warning lights flashed across the command center as sensor data flooded in from every direction. Mining Vessel Prospect 7, direct impact, no survivors. Mining Vessel Iron Will, hull breach, crew evacuating. Mining Vessel Lucky Strike lost contact, presumed destroyed. 3 ships gone in the first hour. Gripped the railing in front of him as the numbers climbed. 4 ships, 5, 7. Admiral Perry stood at the center of the chaos like a stone in a river. Her voice never wavered as she issued orders, redirected assets, and coordinated rescue efforts for damaged vessels. Around her, humans worked with frantic efficiency, their faces pale but their hands steady. Admiral, the debris pattern has shifted, reported, her fingers flying across her console. Our original deflection calculations are no longer valid. We need to recalculate. How long? 20 minutes for basic projections. 2 hours for full tactical analysis. We don't have 2 hours. Give me the basics and we'll adapt from there. Danny Cole had joined the operation despite being a diplomat, not a military officer. He worked at a communications station, coordinating rescue shuttles and keeping track of personnel across the fleet. Lisa Marsh was somewhere out there in the field, leading repair teams on damaged vessels. "Ambassador," Danny called out without looking up from his screen, "your government is requesting an update. What do you want me to tell them?" Stared at the tactical display. The field was still moving towards 7. The human fleet was spread across thousands of kilometers, tiny points of light against an endless wall of death. They were losing ships, they were losing people, and they kept fighting. "Tell them the humans are not retreating," said. "Tell them help is still coming." Understood. Danny sent the message and returned to his work. The hours blurred together. Watched humans perform acts that everything he understood about survival instincts. When a rescue shuttle took damage, its crew flew it into a debris cloud to shield an evacuating mining vessel. When a communications relay failed, a technician volunteered to spacewalk through active shrapnel fields to repair it. When a damaged ship began drifting toward a collision, its captain ordered all non-essential crew to evacuate while he stayed behind to steer it clear. Every time a human died, the others paused for just a moment, a breath, a tightening of jaws, and then they returned to work, fighting harder than before. "Why do they do this?" asked no one in particular. A young human officer nearby heard him. Her name tag read, though she was no relation to anyone new. Her eyes were red from exhaustion and something that might have been tears. "Because giving up means they died for nothing," she said quietly. "If we stop now, all those people who gave everything just become statistics. But if we keep going, if we finish this, then they become heroes. They become the reason 800 million people survived." She turned back to her station before he could respond. 12 hours into the operation, Admiral Perry made a decision that changed everything. "The original plan isn't working fast enough," she announced. "We need to increase our deflection rate by 40% or we won't clear the critical mass in time." "Admiral, that's impossible with current resources," one of her officers protested. "Then we need to do something impossible." She studied the tactical display for a long moment. "The meridian will enter the densest part of the field and act as a gravitational anchor. We'll use our mass to help redirect the medium-range debris while the mining vessels handle the larger objects." "Ma'am, that will put the flagship directly in the impact zone." "I know what it will do." Admiral Perry's voice was calm. "We have the strongest shields and the most experienced crew. If anyone can survive in there, it's us." No one argued. No one questioned her decision. They simply began preparing for the most dangerous maneuver any of them had ever attempted. His voice crackled over the command channel. "Admiral, I'm requesting permission to take lead position in the mining formation. My ship has the best engines for precision work." "Granted, but if things get too hot in there, I expect you to pull back." "Understood, ma'am. I'll be careful." Doubted that very much. The meridian pushed forward into the heart of the asteroid field. Rocks the size of buildings tumbled past the windows. Smaller debris pinged against the shields in a constant, terrifying rhythm. The ship shuddered with every impact, and the lights flickered as power was diverted to defensive systems. On the tactical display, watched mining vessel push even deeper into the chaos. The man was threading his ship through gaps that seemed impossibly narrow, using his gravitational equipment to nudge asteroids onto new trajectories with surgical precision. "You're getting too close to the dense zone," Lisa Marsh warned over the comm. She was on one of the repair frigates, coordinating shield repairs for damaged vessels. "I see an opportunity," replied. "There's a cluster of 6 objects heading for a collision. If I can separate them now, we'll save ourselves 3 hours of work later. The radiation levels in that area are off the charts." "I'll be quick." He pushed forward before anyone could stop him. watched the small dot representing ship disappear into a mass of overlapping debris signatures. For several agonizing minutes, there was no communication. Then's voice returned, strained but triumphant. Cluster separated, heading back to safe zone now. A cheer went up in the command center, but the celebration lasted only seconds. New debris cascade detected, announced, her voice tight with alarm. A chain reaction from the western quadrant, you have incoming. On the display, a wall of rocks swept towards position. He tried to maneuver, but there was nowhere to go. The debris caught him from both sides, pinning his vessel between two massive asteroids that ground against each other like the jaws of some cosmic beast. "Report," Admiral Perry demanded. Static, then a weak signal. "I'm alive, ship is badly damaged, engines are offline, life support is running on backup. Can you hold position?" A long pause. "Yes, ma'am, but I'm not going anywhere on my own." "We'll get rescue teams to you." "Negative, Admiral, you need those teams for the mission. I've got air for about 9 hours. Focus on the field. Come get me when you're done." Admiral Perry closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them, her face was stone. "Understood, stay alive. That's an order." "Yes, ma'am. I promised my daughter I'd be home for her birthday. I intend to keep that promise." The channel went silent, stared at the display, at the tiny dot trapped deep within the asteroid field. A man was going to sit alone in a broken ship for 9 hours, waiting to see if he would be rescued or if he would die in the cold darkness of space. And he had told them to focus on saving strangers instead of saving him. Finally understood something about humans that no report or historical record had ever captured. They were not brave because they did not feel fear. They were brave because they felt fear and acted anyway. They were brave because they valued other lives as much as their own, sometimes more. He sent a message to the Galactic Council. He wrote that the humans were not retreating and that they were advancing into the most dangerous part of the field. He wrote that he did not fully understand these creatures, but he was beginning to believe in them. Then he returned to watching, waiting, and hoping that belief would be enough. 31 hours into the operation, the Meridian was dying. Could feel it in the way the ship groaned with every impact. Could see it in the warning lights that flickered across every console in the command center. The shields were at 18%. The hull had been breached in 3 sections. 17 human ships had been lost, and the casualty count had passed 400. And still they had not stopped. Admiral Perry stood at her post like she had been carved from stone. Her uniform was stained with coffee and something that might have been blood from a minor injury she had refused to treat. She had not slept in over 30 hours. None of them had. "Admiral," said, her voice hoarse from exhaustion, "we've received a message from the Galactic Council." "Put it through." The holographic display shifted to show High Counselor. The old looked even more aged than he had at the original meeting, as if the weight of watching this operation had added years to his already ancient frame. "Admiral Perry," said slowly, "the Council has observed your efforts with great respect. Your species has shown courage beyond anything we anticipated. However, given the losses you have sustained, we wish to offer you an honorable withdrawal." Admiral Perry did not blink. A withdrawal. Yes, no one would blame humanity for failing at an impossible task. You have already done more than anyone expected. Your sacrifice has been noted and will be remembered, but further losses serve no purpose if the mission cannot succeed. Is the Council ordering us to withdraw? No, we are offering you the option to do so without shame. Admiral Perry was quiet for a long moment. Around her, the command center had gone silent. Every human in the room was watching, waiting to see how their leader would respond. "High Counselor," she said finally, "with respect, we decline your offer." "Admiral, your fleet is being destroyed." "My fleet is doing its job. We came here to save 800 million lives. We're not done yet. The mathematics suggest you cannot possibly complete the deflection in time. Then we'll change the mathematics. Admiral Perry straightened her spine. Counselor, I appreciate your concern, but humans don't stop fighting because the odds look bad. We stop fighting when the fight is over. And this fight isn't over until those asteroids miss that planet or until every one of us is dead. Those are the only two outcomes I'm willing to accept. Stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his ancient eyes, something that might have been understanding or might have been sorrow. Very well, Admiral. The Council will continue to observe. May your courage be rewarded. The connection closed. Admiral Perry turned back to the tactical display without another word. Deep in the asteroid field, Lisa Marsh was leading a repair team outside the Meridian's hull, watched her progress on a secondary monitor. She and her crew were working in emergency suits, the only protection between them and the lethal radiation that permeated this section of space. Lisa, radiation levels are climbing, Danny Cole warned from his station. You need to get back inside. The gravitational anchor is offline, Lisa replied through the comm. If we don't fix it now, the whole deflection pattern falls apart. Give me 3 more hours. You don't have 3 hours. At current exposure rates, you'll hit lethal doses in 90 minutes. Then I'll work fast. She did not come back inside. Watched her small form moving across the hull, welding connections and replacing fried circuits with her own hands. Her team worked beside her, none of them willing to leave while their leader remained. The repairs that should have taken 12 hours were completed in just under 3. When Lisa finally returned to the ship, she collapsed in the airlock. Medical teams rushed to treat her for radiation exposure. She would survive, but she would need weeks of treatment before she fully recovered. Was it worth it? Asked Danny, his voice hollow. The anchor is back online. We just saved 6 hours of deflection work. Danny's face was grim. So yes, it was worth it. Lisa would say the same thing. On the tactical display, his vessel remained trapped. 8 hours had passed since the debris pinned him. He was still alive, still sending occasional status reports, still waiting for rescue that might never come. Admiral Perry called over the comm. How are you holding up? Getting a little cold in here, Admiral. Life support is running low, but I've been worse. We're going to get you out. I know you will. Just focus on the mission first. You've been in there for 8 hours. We can spare a rescue team. No, ma'am. I've been watching the sensor data. You're still short on the western approach. If you pull resources for me, you'll miss the window on that cluster near Sector 7. Admiral Perry closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion she was barely controlling. You're not expendable. Never said I was, but those 800 million people on 7 aren't expendable either. And right now, they need those resources more than I do. A pause. Admiral, my daughter is going to be 7 years old next week. I promised her I'd be there. I intend to keep that promise, but if I have to break it, I want it to be because I was helping save millions of kids who are going to have birthdays too. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Now stop worrying about me and go save that planet. The channel went quiet. Saw Admiral Perry wipe something from her eye before turning back to the tactical display. All units, she announced, her voice steady once more. Prepare for final phase. We've got 30 hours until impact window. Let's finish this. The next several hours were a blur of coordinated chaos. Mining vessels pushed deeper into the field than any sane navigation system would allow. Support ships flew through debris storms to deliver fuel and supplies to crews that refused to retreat. The Meridian itself continued serving as a gravitational anchor, its damaged hull absorbing impacts that would have destroyed lesser vessels. Danny Cole worked alongside communications officers who had volunteered to help coordinate the effort. They did not speak the same language, but somehow they understood each other perfectly. When one system failed, another stepped in. When one crew needed help, another provided it. Found himself working too. He did not know when he had stopped being an observer and started being a participant. He relayed messages, translated communications, helped coordinate emergency response teams that were preparing for whatever debris might still reach the surface. At some point, Danny appeared beside him with a cup of something hot. "You should rest," Danny said. "So should you." "Fair point." Danny sat down heavily. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 2 days. "Ambassador, can I ask you something?" "Yes." "After this is over, whatever happens, will you remember what you saw here?" Considered the question carefully. "I will remember everything. I will remember the humans who died. I will remember sitting alone in a broken ship, telling his admiral to save strangers instead of him. I will remember Lisa Marsh walking into lethal radiation because a machine needed fixing. I will remember all of it." Danny nodded slowly. "Good, because that's the real message we're sending here. Not that humans are powerful, not that we have advanced technology, but that when someone needs help, we show up. We show up even when it costs us. We show up even when we're scared. We show up because that's who we are. And if you fail, if all of this is not enough." Danny looked at him with eyes that held exhaustion and sadness, and something else that burned underneath it all. "Then we'll fail together, and we'll fail knowing we did everything possible." He stood and stretched his tired muscles. "But we're not going to fail, Ambassador. Not today, not when it matters this much." He walked back to his station, watched him go, then turned back to his own console. 60 seconds until the final coordinated detonation. 60 seconds that would determine whether 800 million people lived or died. Closed his eyes, and for the first time in his very long life, he prayed to gods he was not sure existed. He prayed for the humans. He prayed for his people. He prayed for a universe where caring about strangers was rewarded instead of punished. And he waited. The detonation was beautiful in the way that only destruction can be beautiful. Watched through the Meridian's windows as hundreds of nuclear warheads exploded in perfect sequence, a chain of artificial stars blooming across the darkness. The asteroid field fractured along precisely calculated lines, massive rocks splitting into smaller fragments that spiraled away from their original trajectory. For several eternal seconds, no one in the command center breathed. Then let out a sound that was half sob and half laugh. "Trajectory confirmed. The field is breaking up along projected vectors. 7 will experience meteor showers for the next decade, but—" She paused, her voice cracking. "But the colony will survive. Impact density is within planetary defense parameters." Admiral Perry closed her eyes. Her hands gripped the railing in front of her so tightly that her knuckles went white. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Confirmed. Confirmed, Admiral. 800 million people are going to live." The command center erupted. Humans embraced each other, tears streaming down exhausted faces. Someone started laughing and could not stop, felt his own mandibles trembling with an emotion he could not name. But Admiral Perry did not celebrate. She turned immediately to the communications console. "Do you copy? We did it. The field is deflecting. Now give me your position so we can get you out of there." Static answered. The celebration died as quickly as it had started. Every eye in the room turned to the display showing last known position. "Respond." "Nothing." "Get me rescue teams to Sector 12 now," Admiral Perry ordered. Her voice was steady but could see her hands shaking. "Full speed. I don't care about debris risks." "Admiral, that sector is still active with secondary cascades." "I don't care. Move." 3 rescue shuttles launched towards position. Found himself standing at the communications console, as if being closer would somehow make a difference. Danny Cole was beside him, his face pale and drawn. The shuttles pushed through debris fields that would have turned lesser pilots back. They navigated between tumbling rocks and radiation zones that made their sensors scream warnings. And finally, they reached the twisted wreckage of a mining vessel. "Admiral, we've reached the target. The ship is badly damaged but intact, attempting to establish contact." Silence stretched across the command center, counted heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then a weak voice crackled over the comm. "This is my Admiral there." Admiral Perry grabbed the console so hard that the metal bent under her grip. "You're alive." "Barely, running on emergency oxygen for the last 9 hours. It's been a long wait." A pause. "Did we make it?" "We made it. 7 is safe." Another pause, longer this time. When spoke again, his voice was thick with something that might have been tears. "Good, that's good. Tell my daughter I'm coming home for her birthday after all." The rescue teams extracted from his broken ship 40 minutes later. He was suffering from hypothermia, oxygen deprivation, and a list of minor injuries that would have killed someone less stubborn. He walked off the shuttle under his own power, refusing help from the medics who rushed to meet him. The human fleet limped back toward Nexus Prime. They had lost 23 ships and 412 crew members. Every vessel that remained bore the scars of the battle, hulls pitted and scorched, systems damaged, crews exhausted beyond anything they had ever experienced. And waiting for them at the edge of space was the entire remaining Navy, arranged in an honor formation that stretched across 1,000 kilometers. "Ambassador," the fleet commander announced over open channels, "we have come to escort the human fleet home. It is the least we can do for the saviors of our people." Stood on the Meridian's bridge, watching the ships fall into formation around the battered human vessels. He had no words. For the first time in his very long life, he had no words at all. 3 days later, the Galactic Council convened for what would become the most remembered session in 3,000 years of recorded history. Stood at the central podium, delivering his report. He spoke for nearly 2 hours, describing everything he had witnessed. He described the ships that flew into danger instead of away from it. He described Lisa Marsh walking into lethal radiation to repair a machine. He described sitting alone in a broken vessel for 9 hours, telling his commander to save strangers instead of himself. When he finished, the council chamber was silent. High Counselor rose slowly from his seat. The ancient looked out across the assembled representatives, his eyes finding the small human delegation seated in their usual section. "Ambassador," said quietly, "you have given us statistics and facts, but I sense there is something more you wish to say." Nodded. He had thought about this for 3 days, trying to find the right words. "Statistics do not capture what I witnessed," he said. "The humans did not save our people because they calculated advantage. They did not do it because they expected reward. They did it because the concept of standing by while others suffer is incompatible with how they think. They cannot not help. It is simply who they are." He turned to face the human delegation directly. "I have lived for 170 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed wonders and horrors beyond description. But I have never seen anything like what the humans did in those 2 days. They gave everything they had, including their lives, for people they had never met. And when we offered them the chance to stop, to walk away without shame, they refused. They refused because giving up was not something they were capable of doing." The ambassador rose from his seat. He crossed the chamber slowly, stopping in front of Danny Cole. "Human," the ambassador said formally. "The people wish to offer humanity something that has not been given to any species in 3,000 years, a full alliance, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. We offer this not as payment, because no payment could ever be enough. We offer this because we wish to stand beside a species that would sacrifice so much for strangers." Danny Cole stood. He looked tired, grieving for those who had been lost but unbowed. "On behalf of Earth and all human territories," he said slowly, "we are honored to accept, but I want to be clear about something. We didn't do this for recognition. We didn't do this for alliances or trade agreements or political advantage. We did it because someone needed help and we were able to give it. That's who humans are. That's who we've always been. The Council voted unanimously to accept the alliance. It was the first unanimous vote in over 500 years. That evening, sat alone in his quarters on Nexus Prime, writing in his personal journal. He had kept the journal for over a century, recording his observations about the various species he encountered. Tonight, he wrote about humans. He wrote that the galaxy contained many powerful species, many ancient civilizations, many great warriors and wise philosophers and brilliant scientists. But only one species consistently responded to catastrophe with 5 words that made the rest of the galaxy hold its breath. "We'll take care of it." He wrote that the galaxy was beginning to understand what those words meant. Not that humans were invincible, not that they always succeeded, but that when humans made that promise, they would move heaven and earth to keep it. They would fly into asteroid fields. They would walk into radiation. They would sit alone in broken ships for 9 hours, telling their commanders to save strangers first. They would do all of this because caring about others was not a strategy for humans. It was not a calculation. It was simply who they were, written into their bones and their blood and the very core of their being. And that concluded, made them the most terrifying and wonderful species the galaxy had ever known. He set down his pen and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, was on his way home to see his daughter. Somewhere out there, 800 million were looking up at a sky that would rain small meteors for years but would never burn them to ash. And somewhere out there, humans were already preparing for the next time someone needed help. Because that was what humans did. That was what they would always do. And the galaxy was better for it.